Hi, I'm William Steele, and this is All in VR. I'm all in VR. Are you? So today we're going to be talking about what's been a buzz all over YouTube and the internet and anything that has to do with the XR industry the past week, which has been the Apple Vision Pro. And we're going to take more of a high-level look at the implications of the Apple Vision Pro. And of course, I'll discuss what I think about the Apple Vision Pro in and of itself and the price tag and features and everything else, and comparison to the Meta line of products and the other headsets in the industry. But the main thing I want to talk about is the overall impact. So let's start. So the Meta Vision Pro, not the Meta Vision Pro, the Apple Vision Pro. I keep on doing that. I don't know why. I've done a couple of takes. It's not the Meta Vision Pro. It's the Apple Vision Pro. The great thing about the Apple Vision Pro is it is a new device, and they are doing some new things, sure, and they're trying to take a different take on it. I'm not sure I really buy the new take that they're taking, which is it is a spatial computing device. We have some spatial computing devices at a fraction of the cost. And do you really want to have a computing device be on your head? Like, are you really seeing that the Apple Vision Pro is the advent of wearing this thing all day, right? So the specs are very impressive, right? The resolution, more than 4K per eye. While it doesn't have the same field of view as the newest headsets from Meta, it has a very, very good resolution and pixel density to where you basically can't see any screen door effect. And that is fantastic. But I still think if you're going to go to that extreme, you really do still need a decent field of view, at least on par with what everybody else is doing right now. Now, that coupled with the camera pass-through quality, which is good. It's definitely better than, let's say, the Meta Quest 3, definitely better than the Meta Quest Pro, but you still know, you can still tell that you have cameras that you're looking through. And this is fantastic, that the quality is getting better. The things that I don't really care about, I don't think many people are really going to care about that much, are things like eye tracking and face tracking, at least not for a while. The avatars are cool looking. They look great. Well, all right, they look creepy. They look creepy. They don't look great. They look still kind of creepy. But of the artificially generated avatars that we've seen, they look much better than all the other ones I've seen. There's, I think, is Ready Player Me. Was it one of these companies? I think maybe it was Ready Player Me that had really kind of creepy avatars. Was that it? Let's see. Let's take a look. I can't remember who made those kind of creepy looking avatars. Maybe it's Ready Player Me. Maybe Player Me. I think this is it. But let's see. Let's see if this is the one where they look kind of creepy. No, this is not it. Where were those creepy avatars that they had? They're based off of a scan of your face. Let's see if I can find that. See, scan your face avatar. It might have been Spatial. I'm not sure. Who was this? It wasn't that. I remember there was some kind of... Who was using them? Somebody was using them and they looked really creepy. Was it... Maybe it was Spatial. I don't remember for sure. Somebody had some creepy looking avatars for a while. It might have been Spatial, actually. I think Spatial was using these 3D scanning of your face. I could be wrong. I'm trying to see... No, okay, so Spatial's using Ready Player Me. So I don't know. But anyway, of the basically realistic looking avatars that we've seen so far that actually you can use today, there was another one. I don't remember who made them. They were creepy AF. And the Apple Vision Pro ones look a little bit better. But they're still kind of weird, and I don't really get some of like the rendering that they're doing. Like when somebody on the sides of their face, it looks fuzzy. Like, why does it need to look blurry and fuzzy on the side of their face? Like, that's going to be the most static part of their face. Their ears aren't going to really be moving. Sure, maybe some people can move their ears a little bit, but that's going to remain relatively static. So that shouldn't be that hard to put that in and to be able to have that render in real time with everything else. So I don't really get what they're doing there, because that could add a little bit more realism to what's going on, because this kind of haze around the face is just a little weird. I'm not sure, unless they're using it to save computing power. I know that they are using they're using foveated rendering to increase the quality of what's being rendered. And that makes me wonder. So they're using foveated rendering, and they're having trouble, actually. You notice when certain things are happening, it gets a little sluggish and stuttery, and it's not perfectly smooth. And it's using foveated rendering, I believe, for everything that it's doing, essentially. So this is an M2 chipset and a separate chip for all the tracking and everything. So where is it chugging on? My best guess is that it's been severely underclocked. So you're not really getting the same capability as a MacBook, let's say, maybe not even a MacBook Air, because you just can't, you can only have so much thermal dissipation out of the headset. So that's my best guess, is that it's not utilizing its full potential. Now, maybe those are things that they can work on in the future. I mean, obviously thermal limits are going to be thermal limits, end of story. But as they maybe find better ways to render things and process things, I imagine that the software itself was probably rushed to be released a little bit. So we'll see how much further they get with the chipset that's in there already. Now, one thing that we've noticed that Meta has been able to do, and I do applaud them for this, there's certain things that I'm not thrilled that they've done, but I do applaud them for the fact that they've continuously doing updates, have managed to improve the rendering quality and performance of the Quest 2, the Quest 3, and the Quest Pro. Pretty much every so often in a release, they do some actually major updates that bring major performance improvements. So maybe we'll see Apple do the same thing. I'm not sure. I'm not confident, because we don't know how they're going to deal with that. In my experience, Apple products, in terms of when they have issues, it takes forever for things to get resolved. So, and performance, sometimes they do some updates, but I don't usually see major leaps in performance with their hardware in general from release to release. So we'll see, though, because this whole XR, as they're calling it, spatial computing, and spatial video. Don't even get me started on spatial video. We'll talk about that one in a little bit, about what spatial video actually really should be and what it isn't. But their spatial computing, fine, but what they're doing is not that revolutionary. So unless they're doing some really complex 3D rendering, it shouldn't actually require that much computing power to be able to do what it's doing, especially with a separate chip on board that's supposed to handle a lot of that heavy lifting of the cameras and the extra compute data and everything else that it needs before rendering essentially mostly 2D applications and imagery over a 3D world. So I'm not that impressed. And again, most of the apps, they're spatial computing. The idea is you're basically taking 2D apps and utilizing them in a 3D space and be able to put multiple monitors or pages, not even multiple monitors, multiple pages. You can only use one right now, one Apple screen in front of you at a time. Mind you, we have, on the Quest side of things, you do have a platform, I shouldn't be drawing a blank, I worked for them. You have Immersed, which you can have up to 5 screens, I believe, unless they've made that more screens, but up to 5 virtual screens around you. So there already are solutions. And that kind of makes me wonder why people are getting so excited. I guess a lot of the people who are very excited about the Apple Vision Pro, about things specifically that are already being done in other headsets. Again, things that have already been done and are being done and have been done for quite a while in the Meta Quest headsets, like mirroring your computer screen. Right now you can mirror Mac, PC, and Linux in your VR, in your headset, with something like Immersed. Now, Immersed is a whole nother story. We're going to talk about that in a future episode. I did used to work for them, and we'll talk more about my experience working there and what I think about what they're doing now with their essentially agenda to go public now. Again, another story, another episode of All in VR, and we'll do that hopefully in the next few weeks. I want to be releasing a lot more videos. But let's continue talking about the Apple Vision Pro. So, it's a VR headset. It's still a VR headset. I don't care what Apple says. It's a VR headset. I mean, if we go over here and we look, it's the definition of a VR headset. They want to try to call it a spatial computing device. Like I said, we already have spatial computing devices by XReal, formerly Nreal. And they're perfectly fine, actually, for that use case. I actually have, where do I have it? Well, here's the box for it, but it's not in there. I have my Nreal. Well, when they were called Nreal, I bought them, and these were the lights, the Nreal lights. And, you know, they're much smaller, and the ones that they have now are even smaller and lighter. And for just having multiple monitors and web pages and things floating around you for spatial computing, this makes the most sense. It's far cheaper, and if that's what you want to use it for, I mean, I spent a week in this. I actually I have the video for it. I took all the video for it, and I intended on producing a video of me spending a week in these glasses, doing my work, going to bars, walking around the city, everything, wearing these. If you want me to actually edit that video and post it, I'll do it. It's from like 2 years ago. So it's old news, as one would say. But it is a great piece of tech. There are issues with it. And the biggest issue, and this is a common issue in the XR industry, and that is everybody wants to own the ecosystem. They want to own the hardware, and they want to own the software ecosystem. And the big problem with that is most companies are not good at building both hardware and software products. Now, I loathe Apple. I'm going to be honest. I hate Apple with a vengeance. I can't stand the company, but one of the few things that they've managed to do that a lot of companies haven't done nearly as well is owning both the hardware and the software and having that closed ecosystem. They're one of the few companies that have actually managed to do that pretty well, let's say. There's a whole host of reasons I hate Apple, and most of it isn't that I hate the interface, that I hate Mac OS X. I don't. I actually kind of like Mac OS X, but I hate the way that they run their company, how they make products that are meant to be disposable, non-repairable, and they're totally anti-right to repair, like horribly anti-right to repair. And again, that's something that we could talk about in another video. I can rant all day about Apple, but we'll do that. Actually, if you want to hear somebody rant about Apple, go watch Louis Rossmann, Rossmann Group on YouTube. He's all about right to repair, and he's awesome what he's done for right to repair in general. But moving on. So going back to XReal, there's like no software for this thing, and the few apps that did get built, they worked briefly, and then when they started updating their software, all the apps that everybody built stopped working. And I think part of that is that they tried to launch a new company with a closed ecosystem, and they're really slow at doing things and adopting things. They do updates, but then would break these glasses, which I spent like $600 on, let's say, and it broke these glasses, and then they didn't work for months, and I had to use an old version of their software to get them to work. So it was just very inconsistent. I mean, part of that also is the complexity of you have to connect these to an Android phone, and there's so many different Android phones, which is a little bit different than the Apple ecosystem. There's a limited number of hardware device variation that you have to deal with. So I get that, but in terms of what they're doing, I don't think they should be trying to own the entire ecosystem. Obviously, they released their own core app called Nebula, which is fine. That usually works, not always with these glasses now, but they trying to own your own ecosystem. Like if they would have given me the ability, like a full-blown API that I could go in and I could have built my own apps, I would have built a lot of stuff in here. But it was so limited what you could do with their API. And then when they do an update, suddenly your app doesn't work anymore. Like no backwards compatibility half the time. So anyway, I digress. That was kind of a waste of investment for me. And that's why I'm not going to buy another XReal product. I would have if they would have kept up support. I would have been definitely jumping to buy the latest. The Air 2 Ultra is what they came out now, and they look much more stylish. a lot more stylish than these. They're great. I mean, they look really cool. But why am I going to buy something that's not going to really do anything for me? Is it the Air 2 Ultra? Let's see. I think it's, or no, it's the Air 2 Pro. Sorry, not the Air 2 Ultra. It's the Air 2 Pro. And that's the one that has, again, cameras and AR built into it. But again, if you don't have any apps that take advantage of a full AR set of glasses, then don't waste my time. Because I'm not going to buy the Air 2 Pro, just to do the same things I can do on just the regular Airs or whatever. So anyway, we're not talking about X-Real. We're talking about Apple. You'd probably be surprised, but yes, let's go back to Apple. So, like I said, we already have much cheaper spatial computing devices. So I don't know what tree Apple's barking up, but a lot of the reviewers I've seen like, oh my God, I can put my computer screen in front of me. I can put it here and I can walk away and I come back and it's in the same place. Oh, mind blown. I mean, you can do that with these. You've been able to do that with the Meta Quest devices. If I put a screen or multiple screens or anything in another room and I walk out of the room, I come back, they're exactly where I left them. I've gone outside and turned off the Guardian and I placed something in anywhere, let's say in the front of my house, and I go around back and I come back. When I come back, it's exactly to like the millimeter where I left it. So I'm sorry, but for all you Apple fanboys that are like, your mind is blown by how good the tracking is, they're not the only ones who have had this nailed. And honestly, I'd have more trust on the reliability of tracking right now with Meta because they've been in the game for much longer. Sure that we're going to see tracking issues, and we already are to a certain extent, right? You can't be in a car or sit on a plane and really use, from what I understand, use the Apple Vision Pro, even though we've seen people do this. We've seen people, as they're called, glass holes, right? Go and
for some reason, Apple products eliminate all forms of embarrassment because there's a lot of people that are just wearing.
Yeah, so people just walk around wearing.
Probably not a great idea to advertise almost for.
All right, let's just mute that. But yeah, so this device, people are walking around wearing. I mean, that I get that, but like, and you really think people are going to continue doing this? No, absolutely not. This is like a one-time thing. I mean, you see the one guy. Okay, there's one guy here in a Meta Quest Pro. That actually makes more sense than the Apple Vision Pro at this point, because I don't think that they've really designed it for mobile use. So I don't know what these people are doing with it. I mean, I guess, but are they really doing it? Because I've heard people say that if it's moving, it doesn't work, but I could be wrong. I don't know. So again, I haven't had a chance to try these kind of use cases because I don't own an Apple Vision Pro and I don't intend to. I'm not going to spend $3,500 for this thing. It's cool. It's not $3,500 cool. Even if the actual value proposition for some people just with the technology itself might be that cool, it's the value proposition is just not there. If you're an Apple fanboy, I'm sure, Apple fans buy the new phone, like it's a cult. Let's just be honest. I know everybody who's an Apple fan is gonna be like, oh, it's not a cult. It's just really that good. Their products are that good. Like the defenses are, if you're, the same arguments that come out of the Apple fan base, like the hardcore Apple fan base, are the same idiotic, like kind of mentality I hear from people who are like flat earthers, people who actually believe the world is flat. Don't even get me started on that. It's not even for this channel, but there's people, and there's actually more of them than you would think, of people that believe the world is flat. But I'm not going to spend my money on something. I mean, obviously I'm anti-Apple in general, so I'm not going to spend my money on an Apple product just out of principle. But even besides that, I wouldn't be buying. Even if I didn't have that dislike for Apple, I still would not buy the Apple Vision Pro because it's just not, the value proposition isn't there. I'm totally fine with my Quest headset here, my Quest 3. Actually, I've got both. I've got both the Quest Pro and the Quest 3. And we'll get into the Quest Pro in a minute and talk about that. But Quest 3, for what it is, now this is a good value proposition. It's got full color pass-through, depth sensor in it, great optics, and maybe not quite Apple Vision Pro optics, but more than adequate for anything I do. I spend time, actually, now I prefer, my default mode in this is AR mode, pass-through mode. So that makes much more sense. And, you know, I do think that it was smart for Apple not to label it a business device like Meta did with the Quest Pro, right? So they took the Quest Pro and they're like, oh, this is meant for business. This is a business device, yada, yada. And they thought they were going to capitalize on that. And, you know, it didn't pay off, not even nearly. I mean, when you launch a device and it drops in price by 33% in a few months, you know, you've done something wrong. And I think if they would have marketed it more towards the normal user, more people might have bought it. That was the first problem. The second problem is they released it way too early. So they could have released it with maybe not better optics. The optics are adequate. OLED would have been nice, but I'm actually pretty happy with the local dimming in the display, and the optics are very, very good. But it would have been nice to have had the next chipset in there, the next XR2 chipset, and it would have been nice to have a depth sensor in there that they took out. They released that way too early. If you would have had the depth sensor, just the depth sensor, and better pass-through cameras. Depth sensor, better pass-through cameras, and updated chipset, I would have said that would have been a buy. Now, maybe they would have needed to sell it at $2,000 instead of $1,500, and I think that would have been fine. I mean, $1,500 is a good price point, but if they needed to sell it at $2,000, and they would have had those advancements, or they just would have waited because of, obviously they just should have waited to release it, really. They should have released it maybe after the Quest 3. I don't know why they released it before the Quest 3, or alongside the Quest 3, something like that. I guess they didn't want to take away from Quest 3 sales, but I think it had a place if they would have done some things differently. That's one of the many things that I think Meta could have done differently. Now, don't by any means think I'm a Meta fanboy, because I'm not. There's tons of things. I'm not a huge Facebook fan, Meta fan, whatever you want to call them, Oculus fan. Like, I'm not. There's tons of things that I wish Meta would have done differently. And again, that goes to trying to own the entire ecosystem. I don't like how they tried to own the whole ecosystem. And actually, that bit them in the foot. They tried to build this whole metaverse thing, or their version of the metaverse. And I think anybody that tries to build and own this metaverse is going to fail at it. Just like the internet is not, nobody owns it. It's not owned by a single entity. It's a public thing. And we do have web-based XR, notably A-Frame and WebXR essentially. And will that ever get to, will that eventually become the metaverse? It could at some point maybe become the metaverse, or something similar to it, maybe some evolution of it. But I think the metaverse is something that enables all devices to connect, that is not owned by any single entity when the metaverse does eventually happen. And I think it will. I think it's going to happen. But it's going to be more of an open technology, open framework. It's not going to be a closed ecosystem like Meta tried to do with Horizon Worlds, which they sunk tons of money into and failed kind of miserably at it. So yeah, I'm not a Meta fan either. But as far as their hardware goes, it's the best value proposition, and I love everything VR, AR, XR, whatever you want to call it. I love it. I'm not a huge gamer, but I have been impressed lately with some other things that have come out in the gaming space related to VR, particularly UEVR, the Unreal Engine VR injector. It's amazing. And there's games that I've never played before, and probably never would have played unless they were in VR, and now I am. But anyway, well, again, we're going to discuss that in a future episode. I'm looking forward to discussing that because that's so freaking cool. Really, really cool. Only the Apple cult could create a new breed of glass holes. Everybody made a big deal of people going out in the world and wearing their Quest 3s when it first came out. And people only do it for, people do it for the YouTube channel. They do it as an experiment. Most people, now maybe at a cafe, I might wear a Quest Pro or something like that. if I wanted multiple screens around me, or a Quest 3, but, and maybe even an Apple Vision Pro. That's a potential use case. Granted, you could also just have a pair of spatial computing glasses if that's all you want to do. But if you want to do more than just spatial computing, maybe you do want an actual VR device with you. And I reiterate, the Apple Vision Pro. Sorry, Apple. It is a VR device, whether you like it or not. But yes, we have a whole new evolution of, as they say, glass holes. I like this video. I thought it was entertaining. Let's see, what does the audio say?
What are you wearing?
Huh? Oh, these. It's Goggle Glass. Pinnacle of computer technology. Have a go.
It's the internet. Wow. Can I do Facebook?
Tap this part twice and say Facebook.
Facebook.
I don't know what this is. It's funny.
Can you watch porn on it? Porn?
Try it in German.
Der Porn, bitte? Der Porn, bitte?
Can you watch porn on this?
Doesn't work at all.
Want to give it a try, Ad?
No, I don't like computers. I think they're evil.
Evil. Don't be stupid. Come on, man. Come on.
Oh, come on then.
Help me. Help me. I'm true.
Weird.
Why would you want to get it? You got
I have not seen this before, so it's pretty funny.
Hey, I'm Steve. I invented the computer. Wanna come have a look at my new operating system? Come on, Andrew. Come to me. Come on. Let's play.
He's supposed to be dead Steve Jobs, I guess.
Little further. That's right.
I mean, sorry, Steve Jobs,
Come on.
but
Come to me. Join us. Join us.
oh, it's-
Why you using inferior products, Andrew? I don't like it when you do that.
it's ridiculous.
Come on, Andrew. You know it makes sense. Come to me. Come on, get in here.
Sorry I used inferior products. I didn't mean to. No, help me! Help me! Let me out!
Andrew.
Let me out! Oh!
Andrew.
Let me.
Andy! Are you okay?
I don't like computers.
Okay, that was hilarious. This is my first time seeing this, so I just pulled it up because I thought it'd be entertaining to see amidst all of this. So, yes, like I said, a whole new evolution of glass holes, but I don't think it'll last. I think people are doing it just as to an experiment as well as for YouTube videos as well. So I think that'll be the end of it. I could be wrong, but time will tell. So, like I said, I'm not complaining. I mean, I am complaining, but I'm also not complaining. What I mean by that is Apple Vision Pro is great for the XR industry. Now, don't even get me started on these Reddit idiots, but on Reddit, arguing with people about, how impactful the Vision Pro is and what it means and, whether it's worth $3,500, and you get tons of people that are clearly Apple fanboys, and they're like all get their panties in a bunch when you're telling them that it's not as revolutionary as some people are making it seem. And I say that because of when I watch people like MBKHB or whatever his name is, Marcus, and other people who have tried it out and they're blown away. But the things that they mention, like I said, is they're mentioning how well the spatial anchoring is. Again, Quest Pro does that perfectly fine. Make a big deal about the pass-through. And yes, the quality of the pass-through is great. I mean, but what is necessary for what you're doing? Like, I mean, if you're really spending your time being immersed, how important is it? If that's important, then get a pair of glasses. Like, if it's that important. Or, I mean, is $3,500 worth it to just have pass-through that's good? Because I guarantee we're going to see a new device that has pass-through that good in the next year. It's just going to happen. And it's going to be a lot less than $3,500. I promise you that. So there's that part of it. And Meta will probably come out with their, what do they call them? Codec avatars. Codec avatars. The reason I think they're called codec avatars, I'm not 100% sure, but my guess is they're using some form of AI to kind of artificially generate using some codec-based algorithms to change the facial expressions to make them look very, very realistic. It's something I've thought about. I actually do some work in computer vision, and I think this could actually work out pretty well. So I'm interested to see how those end up looking. I think they'll definitely compete easily when they are released with these Apple Vision Pro avatars. I forget what they're calling them. And so, yeah, so there's just a lot of things that people are talking about with the Apple Vision Pro that are so enamored. Oh, and like the ability to connect to the screen and make it huge. Again, you can do that in Quest 3, for instance. And it looks pretty good. Can you see some, maybe pixels to some extent? In certain situations, yes, but it looks damn good. I'm sure that it looks better in the Vision Pro, for sure, but $3,500 better or $3,000 better, because right, the Quest 3's $500, so you're talking about $3,000 more for those little improvements. And it's already been shown, people don't really care that much for the face and eye tracking, unless you need it for like foveated rendering, which it appears that they need that for the Apple Vision Pro. So that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about is when I say I'm not complaining because it's good for the overall industry. It's good for the XR industry. Even if Apple wants to call it a spatial computing device, we all know it's a VR device, and that's good for the industry as a whole. Because I guarantee what's going to happen. You're going to have people that have FOMO that know they can't justify spending $3,500. And there are people that have never owned headsets before. And let's look at a lot of the people that are buying these Vision Pro headsets have never owned a headset. Some have, but I bet you at least half of them, if not 3/4 of them, have never owned any kind of VR device before. So of course they're going to be ridiculously wowed by it because they're the only people that would probably spend $3,500 on an Apple device, especially if they're Apple fanatics. So you're going to get a lot of people that wish that they could afford that $3,500 price tag. Not to mention, there's only a limited number of these devices that are going to be able to be produced. So you're going to have Apple is not going to be able to sell anymore anyway when they do sell out until they come out with their next iteration or do another set batch next year or whatever. But you're going to have people that, for whatever reason, can't buy an Apple Vision Pro, but still want a similar experience. And you can get a similar experience buying something like a Quest 3. You just can. And it's a fraction of the price. And it's much more attainable to most people. Can afford that. And when you look at the value proposition of what a Quest 3 gives you, it's there. It is a good value proposition. You can do cloud gaming on it. You can play VR games. You can do spatial computing on it. It's already part of the system. It's not going to be Apple's ecosystem, which I prefer, but again, so I think a lot of people who have never owned a XR type device are going to look at other options because they have some form of FOMO. They hear all the hype from the Apple world and Apple fan base about the Apple Vision Pro, but they just can't justify $3,500. And they will inevitably buy something like the Quest 3, maybe even a Quest 2 if it's the first time. But they want a most comparable experience. I'd go with the Quest 3 if you have FOMO for Apple Vision Pro. Not the Quest Pro. Just go with the Quest 3. But that's the reality. People are going to, so it's good for the industry. It's even good for Meta. And Meta's being smart. What did they do? They immediately added spatial video to everything. Don't even get me started on spatial video. There's multiple layers to my frustration with discussing spatial video. First of all, when people call stereoscopic video spatial video, it makes my brain bleed. Because spatial video is supposed to have true depth. And yes, if you have a stereo side-by-side image, when you're looking at it on the same plane, meaning that the two camera lenses are basically, side by side. If you're looking at it from that perspective, it will look fine. But once you start to tilt your head beyond like 15 degrees, it starts to go out of parallax and you'll start to get double vision as you turn your head. So why does that frustrate me? Well, it doesn't frustrate me stereo vision or 3D stereo video, but that's what it's called, 3D stereo video. Now, spatial video, in my opinion, spatial video, first of all, they come up with a whole new word for something, and everybody likes to do this every so often. The cloud became a huge thing. Cloud this, cloud that, and now it's a ubiquitous name. It's just the freaking internet. That's all it is. Cloud is just the internet. It's computers on the goddamn internet. It's been there for decades. It's nothing new. The cloud is not new. But everybody's like, oh, the cloud, the cloud, the cloud, the cloud. Let's go to the cloud. Okay, fine. Whatever. Anyway, spatial computing, it's VR. Spatial video, it's 3D or stereo or 3D stereo video. Now, Apple's doing it a little bit different, the way that they're encoding the image. They're not doing a side-by-side where you have the right eye on the right, left eye on the left, or top over bottom where you have the right eye on top, left eye on bottom. They're doing it by using a spec of HEVC, which basically just encodes the one image and then additionally encodes the difference between the right eye and the left eye, which can decrease the amount of bandwidth used by a significant amount. So you might have, instead of just of the regular monoscopic video with one camera, your overhead might be like 15% instead of twice the bandwidth, which is great. And actually should require, in theory, less decoding resources and encoding resources. It's just a little more complicated to encode and decode. But that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, when it's being rendered as a stereo side by side. So it's not fully immersive because if you turn your head, you lose the stereo effect and it looks like almost like double vision, you'll see. So what you really need is something that records a real-time depth map, which gives you real-time depth for your image. So you would have one monoscopic image and a depth map, which basically is it looks like the other image, except that the depths are calculated based on the gradients or the shade of color for each pixel. So that'll give you actual depth. And if you were to actually play back what's called RGBD video, stands for RGB, red, green, blue, for your primary colors, and depth is the D. And when you basically kind of overlays those over together, and you can use within a program, can take then, when you overlay it, the shade of the color for the depth determines the actual depth for that pixel. You can basically create almost like a 3D mesh, and then you're putting the video over the mesh. And then even if you tilt your head, no matter what you do, you'll still get the correct depth. And now you can do this, but it's an additional step in computing, especially when you're using stereo cameras, and it's not necessarily perfect. But that's spatial video. When we get to that point, then we're talking about spatial video. Until that, it's just stereo video, which is nothing that special, and really nothing that spatial. Pun intended, I guess. So it's cool, and I do like that made Meta actually, it did a couple things. One, it made Meta want to be able to play it in the headset, and also somebody figured out how to record stereoscopic, spatial, not really spatial, video on the Meta Quest 3, which is really cool, actually. It works really well. I actually tested it, and you can start recording, and you can just go up with the headset on, or if you want, cover the proximity sensor, and you can set the headset somewhere or move it around. without having to be in it and record spatial video. It's not spatial video. Record stereo video. Now I'm doing it. Record stereo 3D stereo video. And that actually looks better than the iPhone because you're recording, the eyes are closer to the distance of your actual eyes. So if you look at what's important in stereo video is that you have a proper IPD or distance between the two cameras, right? And here they're very similar. They're a little, maybe they're almost actually go right almost to my eyes, right? They're almost the same width as my eyes. Not perfect, but actually, yeah, it's actually almost exactly the same width as my eyes. So you get proper stereo rendering with this headset. You don't need to do any funny business. Now, with something like Apple's iPhone, right, the iPhone 15, you actually need to do some fancy stuff to make it look more realistic. And that requires a lot more processing. I'm assuming that they're doing that additional processing to make the stereo effect look proper. Because if you don't, it's just not going to look right. I believe in the headset, in the Vision Pro, the two cameras are about eye width apart, if I remember correctly. So that should be a little more accurate. What I would like these start seeing both the Apple Vision Pro and the Quest 3 do for recording would be to use the built-in depth sensor or time of flight sensor, whatever you want to call it, to create a depth map in real RGBD, because then you can import it and you could use it in something that can play back RGB. There's not a lot of players that can do it. I could do it in Unity, and for my own purposes, and be able to play it back in with true depth. And since they have an onboard depth camera, they can pair that with a stereo vision and some computer vision, or at least give me access to it, and then I could create a much more accurate depth map between both the stereo cameras and the depth camera combined. You can do some magic there if you're a computer vision engineer. So I'd like to see that. So where are we now? Like I went through most of the stuff. Oh yes, and I did talk about this real problem in the XR industry are apps, right? And I think the one who so far, in terms of the best app ecosystem for VR or XR or whatever right now, is Meta. They just have, two. You've got Meta and Steam. For standalone headset, Meta. And then for non-standalone, you have Steam, hands down. There's just no competition. Even with Apple saying they have so many apps now released, they're just 2D apps. And you can do the same on Quest. You can sideload a non-VR app and use it in your Quest headset. So that's nothing special. And like I mentioned, yeah, so I already mentioned that. So I think that almost completes the discussion. I hope it was a discussion and not too much of a rant. I mean, I know there were definitely parts that were rants, but I do really believe this is going to be better for the industry. I mean, we have the Quest 3 already, and I think you're going to see, like I mentioned, you've got everything, you've got all the core components short of face and eye tracking in the Quest 3. You have that in the Quest Pro. The thing is, you can't put the Quest Pro side by side with the Apple Vision Pro. You just can't, because they really screwed up by not putting in a next-gen chipset, not putting a depth sensor, and using subpar cameras. So but short of the face and eye tracking, the Quest 3 is a really viable option if you don't care about those funny avatars, because that's really the only thing. And if you don't care about okay, fine. Then we did the one thing, which also I don't know why Meta didn't do, the gaze-based navigation system. That's kind of cool, and you could do that in the Quest Pro as well. But the Quest 3, I mean, is really, for what you get, is a great device with lots of apps, lots of options that can do most of what the Apple Vision Pro does. Does that diminish what the Apple Vision Pro is and what they've managed to do? No. But like I said, the value proposition has to be there, and it's just not for me. And I think unless you're an Apple fan, for most people, especially who are seasoned VR, AR, XR people, it's just not going to have that value proposition, even for people that could afford it, right? And The Quest Pro, like I said, I really, really, really wish that they would have. I really wish they would have done more. I mean, there are some cool things they did with it, but they should have waited. They should have waited. Absolutely should have waited. I mean, it's a cool device in its own right, but they just, you know, when somebody, they almost get there and they just land short. And it was because of, I'll tell you why. They thought that they were going to be able to capitalize on a business market for this. And they obviously, that did not work. That wasn't the right pitch. The right pitch would have been to people like who are like you and me, who might spend $1,500 on a headset. Again, I think that they knew in order to do that, they would have needed to up the game a little bit on some of the specs, especially they're coming out with the Quest 3 shortly thereafter. I think they should have released it at the same time or released it a little bit after the Quest 3. They should have waited. So some people, you know, wasted money on it because I really don't use the eye tracking that much, honestly, or the face tracking. It's cool. I mean, maybe I will if they get their Kodak avatars working. I might consider it for some use cases. If they got gaze-based tracking system or gaze-based navigation system like the Apple Vision Pro, I might use that. I might use it a little more because it's actually a decent headset. The optics are pretty good, and it's actually got, you know, again, I don't want to get too sidetracked because this is almost over, but the Quest Pro battery life is great. I'll give it that. The battery life compared to the Quest 3, like, I'll play Population 1, for instance. Play it on the Quest 3. Even putting on the battery life saver, the energy saver, power saver, whatever, maybe get 2 hours, maybe 2 to 2.5 hours. Whereas I put on the Quest Pro, so much more time out of it, so much more. It just doesn't die so quickly. I don't know why, but I get like 3-4 hours in Population 1 on it. So Quest Pro there's some things. I mean, the optics are pretty good. So unless I really need the extra computing power in the Quest 3, there's no reason not to use the Quest Pro. And there are certain things I like about it. I like the open interface on it and how it was built. I like the overall design, actually. I think is smart to be able to have that. And it helps the surroundings blend in more when you have that open interface. And again, that's something that you don't have with the Apple Vision Pro, but be able to have, not being fully immersed, if you have it open over here, if you have high quality lenses, but you don't have the same FOV, but you can kind of see around you, it helps with the immersion. It definitely does. So I think that there were definitely a number of things that they did right with the Quest Pro, but they should have waited till they had the chipset and depth sensor figured out and better cameras. And it would have been worth, I think it would have, they could have sold it at $1,500 easily and it would have stayed there, maybe even $2,000, and they could have kept the price there. And it would have been a product that would have preempted the Apple Vision Pro and really could have said that they were there first. But Apple Vision Pro kind of wins in that particular race. But I think we'll hopefully see a Quest Pro 2 or something similar, even though they said they weren't originally. But I think we will see something with face and eye tracking that is similar in quality to the Quest 3. That's, hopefully they're not marketing to businesses. So that's it. I think I explained everything that I wanted to talk about. This went on a little longer than I anticipated, so hopefully when I'm done editing this, it won't be too long. And let me know what you think in the comments. Did you like this video? Do you agree with me? Do you highly disagree with me? If you're an Apple fanboy, you can try to tear me a new one as much as you want. So I always find those conversations interesting, although they can also be a little addicting. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and anything else you think I should talk about as it relates between Meta, Vision Pro. Like I said, the next video I'm going to do, the next video is coming up. We're going to talk about, talk more about the X-Real devices and these AR devices. That'll be one video. I also want to talk about my time, I want to talk about the company Immersed in general, what they're doing, their strategy, what I think about it, what I think about the founder. I worked there more than 2 years, almost 3 years ago. I worked there for a while. and we'll talk about that some. I think that'll be an interesting video, and we'll talk about their headset that they're supposedly working on, and whether I think that'll actually make it to market, and the implications of that, yada yada yada. So we'll talk about that as well. I think that'll make a really good video. What else do I have plans? I have a video that I recently released that compares the tracking between the Quest 2, Quest 3, and Quest Pro headsets. Outdoor tracking specifically, because for a while outdoor tracking really sucked, and it's gotten much better in the Quest headsets, and in particular certain ones. So I compared the tracking between those, and I'm sure I'll think, and UEVR. I want to talk about UEVR, the Unreal Engine VR injector. That thing is that's so cool. It's so cool. Something we definitely have to talk about. Just that. If I had to, you can't play games on. You can't play like Steam. Well, maybe somebody will make a Steam plugin for the Vision Pro. Who knows? Maybe somehow that'll get Steam library on it. No idea. I guess that would be kind of cool. Again, like I said, the more the merrier. I want to buy the Apple Vision Pro, but I am glad it's here. So all you Apple fanboys, just take a breath. I'm glad it's here. I'm glad the Apple Vision Pro is here. I'm glad you have it in your hands. I'm glad you are getting properly introduced to VR. Yes, VR, not spatial computing. VR. I'm William Steele, and this is All in VR. I'm all in VR. Are you?